Hey, what's up, guys, and welcome to my Venomancer max level guide for Conquest of Azeroth. Since my last video, a lot of people have asked me to make a max level guide, so I finally decided to make one. In this video, I'll start off with talking about the different abilities of the class and how the class plays. I'll be talking about the recent big changes to the spec and how this has affected the build since my last video on my leveling guide. I'll be talking about which stats you should prioritize. I'll be talking and showing my talents. I'll be talking about the different rotations for single target and AoE. I'll be talking about the different enchants you would want on your gear. And at the end, I'll show some macros and the weakers that I have made for this spec. So to start off with, our main filler ability is a Venom Bolt. It is basically just a castable ability, which at level 50, you can have a chance to make it castable while moving for 6 seconds. This basically procs always, so you're going to be casting while moving pretty much all the time with Venom Bolt. Next ability we have is Serpent's Fang. Serpent's Fang is an instant cast ability that has a 20% chance to reset. It also spawns a mushroom under the target with a specific talent. This is really good for AoE and it just gives some extra damage. It also heals a little bit, but that's not really too much. We also have two dots. We have an instant cast dot called Wilt, and we have a castable dot called Spore. Spore also drops a mushroom under the enemy every 10 seconds. So after 10 seconds it's been on the target, it's going to drop a mushroom under the target, which deals AoE damage. We have Decay, which applies Wilt and Spore up to 5 people at a target location, and drops mushrooms depending on how many targets it has hit. So if Decay hits, let's say, 5 targets, it's going to spawn 5 mushrooms. We have Fungal Assailant, which is a 1.5 minute cooldown that spawns a little mushroom guy that deals AoE damage. Even though it has a long cooldown, it will be reduced a lot with a specific talent. We have Mycosis, which deals damage and deals even more damage based on how many fungal growth stacks the enemies has on them. And we have Mycelial Ring, which is a cooldown that spawns 12 mushroom under the targets and deals insane both AoE and single target damage. We also have different venoms we want to keep up as buffs on ourselves at all time, which either can deal damage or time damage. It can give us haste, it can heal, it can slow movement speed, stuff like that. So the recent big changes that have come to this spec is, first off, they gave Decay the ability to also apply Spore to enemies. So before it only applied Wilt, but now it also applies Spore, which is this dot. Now this dot also drops mushrooms under the target after 10 seconds of being on the target, which means not only do you get an extra dot on all the enemies you affect with Decay, but you also spawn mushrooms under each target after 10 seconds, which deal even more AoE damage. Other than that, they have given Rotlich replenishment, which means every time Rotlich procs, you get replenishment, which restores mana every 5 seconds. They've also increased the chance of your Weaver Form to proc. Instead of it being 5% chance of proccing the mana thing, you have 15% chance of proccing it. And it also restores 5% of your base mana instead of 5% of your missing mana. These changes have given the spec a lot better mana, but it still has some problems with mana, but it is way better than it was since my last video. Other than that, they've also given Prophetic Speaker a new addition, which reads, in addition, increases the amount of targets affected by Decay by 5. So this means Decay can actually hit up to 10 targets instead of 5 targets, which even further increases your AoE damage. Another big change they've done is they've added a new passive to Mycelial Ring, which increases the damage of your mushrooms by 50%, while also teaching you the Mycelial Ring ability. Now, this is the reason why the build is pretty different compared to my last video, where I went full Fungarian, deep Fungarian, because now this deals way more damage, and this scales way better than Fungarians. Another thing they've also changed with the spec is that this class talent, or this spec talent, also allows your Spore and Wilt to critically strike. Now, this also means that there are some different stat priorities you can do. Before, you could basically only stack haste, but now you can actually also stack crit. So let's continue with the talents. As you can see with these talents, they're actually very different than my last video's talents. The reason for this is that Fungal Allies actually isn't that good anymore. And that the main reason for that is actually because fungal assailants, actually don't scale with spell power. I tested this, and it actually seems like me having no gear and me having gear actually doesn't change the damage of Cloud of Rot, which is the fungal assailant's like main ability. The damage doesn't change at all, so this actually has really bad scaling. Now, it is probably still good for leveling with. I would say when you're leveling, still just instantly go for this because it still deals a massive amount of damage, especially while leveling. But max level, it's actually not worth it to go full Fungarians because it doesn't scale with spell power. Another thing that's also changed with the build is that I don't have Serpent Fang talents. And the reason for this is that right now, Fungal Assailants is actually slightly more damage than Serpent Fang talents, both single target and AoE. Now it is a bit less consistent because I need this to proc for it to actually deal more damage than going Serpent Fang talents. But so far, it actually seems like this is actually better than going Serpent Fang talents, both AoE and single target. I also don't have Captivation anymore because I don't use Serpent Lord's Ring. So I don't really care too much about mycosis damage. It is a nice burst damage, but it's not that high compared to the other things that is in this build. I also focus a lot of decay, so this build is way better than in AoE than it is single target. I have decay, I have different talents for decay, and I have cooldown reductions for decay. And this gives it an insane amount of AoE damage and an insane amount of consistency when it comes to AoE damage. The biggest change is the mycelial ring. The 50% increased damage to mushrooms is an insane buff to mushrooms. This means that in every single fight, mushrooms will most likely be number one, or maybe number two if you have some lucky crits with Venom Bolt or something. But mushrooms will basically always be number one in damage, both in single target and in AoE. The reason I have Prophetic Speaker is because normally I use this build in dungeons and stuff, but if you are doing raids, you can always just swap out Prophetic Speaker with Fungic, which just adds a nice damage or a time effect that deals damage based on your Venom Bolt or Serpent's Fang. But this is the build I would normally go both in raids and in dungeons, except for pure single target fights where going Fungic is slightly better than going Prophetic Speaker. You can also choose to take out Septic Trauma and get Fungal Link instead. Fungal Link gives you 3% more haste, which is not too much, but it is a nice addition. It also reduces your threat generated. Personally, I do like having Septic Trauma just so I don't have to keep refreshing Wild on my target. As long as I just have a little bit of crit, this can keep up Wild for quite a bit of time. But yeah, the thing is also about this build is that since the new changes to Cycle of Decay, you can actually now go full crit instead of going haste. But personally, I have found out that so far for me at least with my gear, crit is better in AoE, but haste is still slightly better in single target because it's way more consistent and it just deals more damage with the dots, etc. But I have seen a lot of high rated players, people that do like ascended raids and stuff. They do go full crit. But yeah, this is basically the build I would go all the time, both in raids and in dungeons. With, of course, I can't change this out to get Fungic for single target damage. Let's get into the rotations for the Venomancer. Now, the rotations are actually pretty simple. You have some dots you need to keep up, and you have some abilities you need to spam. That is basically it, but I will show them here. Start off with, I'm going to start with the single target rotation. You want to keep Spore and Wild up at all times. I missed my Spore, but you want to keep Spore and Wild up at all times on the target. You want to spam Serpent's Fang off cooldown. You want to use Venom Bolt as your filler ability when you have no other buttons to click. And again, you want to keep spamming Serpent's Fang. You want to basically keep spamming Fungal Assailant, and if you can, you want to use Mycosis right after you've used your Fungal Assailant to make your Fungal Assailant do extra damage. And you want to use Mycelial Ring off cooldown. Now, the important thing here is to actually not go So even though Venom Bolt is your filler ability, you don't want to use it so much so you go completely You still want to have mana to use Mycosis or to use your dots. You always want to have enough mana to use Mycosis, your dots, and all your cooldowns. But you actually don't want to ever go Also, Mycosis should also be used off cooldown. Single target rotation is pretty straightforward. Basically, just use Venomancer as filler, use Serpent's Fang off cooldown, Mycosis off cooldown, preferably while fungal assailants are out, and use my Mycelial Ring off cooldown and keep your dots on the target. For the reach rotation, it is pretty similar actually, but instead of putting up spawn wield on your target by hand, you want to use Decay off cooldown. You want to use Serpent's Fang off cooldown. You want to use Fungal Assailants off cooldown with Mycosis, preferably while Fungal Assailants are up. And you want to use Mycelial Ring off cooldown. Again, it is still important that you don't go so you still have mana to use Decay, Mycosis, Fungal, Mycelial Ring, or Fungal Assailants. But basically, spam Decay, spam Fungal Assailant, spam Mycosis while Fungal Assailant is up, and spam Mycelial Ring and spam Serpent's Fang. Now, the reason you want to keep spamming Decay is that not only does it reapply your dots, it also spawns mushrooms under the targets depending on how many targets are hit. As you remember, with this talent, Decay can actually hit up to 10 targets. Now, what this means is that you will actually spawn 10 mushrooms when you use Decay, and this is an insane amount of AoE damage. The reason you want to keep spamming Serpent's Fang, even in AoE damage, even though Serpent's Fang only does single target damage, is because there's this talent, which also spawns a mushroom under the target when you use Serpent's Fang. So you want to keep using Serpent's Fang when you can. Keep using Venomancer so you can proc your Serpent's Fang. You can also use Wand if you're going Remember, Wand is always important to have so you don't go by spamming Venomancer. And your wand can also proc Serpent's Fang. So even though you're not using a skill, remember all direct damage can trigger Rutledge, which will reset the cooldown of Serpent's Fang, which will allow you to spawn mushrooms under the target and also get replenishment, so you get more mana. Right now, since the mana changes, it is actually kind of hard to go completely in AoE because all of your dots have a chance of spawn or of giving you mana. So as long as you keep all your dots up, you will actually pretty much always have an insane amount of mana. Still single target, it is a bit of a problem. But yeah, this is basically the rotations. Keep your dots up, use Serpent's Fang off cooldown, use Mycosis off cooldown, preferably when your Fungal Assailants are out. Use Mycelial Ring off cooldown, and in AoE, use Decay off cooldown because of the mushroom spawning. Now, for the different enchants you will want on your gear, on your shoulders, you want plus 10 spell power and plus 8 resilience rating. On your legs and head, you want either Presence of Sight, which adds 18 spell power, 8 hit rating, or you want Arcanum of Dominance, which adds 12 spell power and 10 stamina and 8 resilience to your legs or head. On your chest, you want plus 5 hit rating. On your wrist, you want plus 15 spell power. On your cloak, you would want plus 5 hit rating. On your chest, you want plus 3 to all stats, or you can get plus 8 to crit rating if you're focusing on crit. For your weapon enchant, you want Arcane Artillery, which increases which gives you a chance to increase your spell power whenever you do damage. On your gloves, you want plus 10 haste. On your boots, you want plus 5 hit rating, and on your belt, you would want plus 10 intellect. Now, let's get into some different macros for this class in general. So I don't really have any spec-specific macros, but for the class, I have some different macros. For example, like this one, where it basically turns into Beetle Form and uses Harden. Now, this is a defensive cooldown. I also have it for my silence. So the silence can only be used in Beetle Form or Spider Form. So I have a macro that stops the casting. It then uses Spider Form if you're not already in Spider Form. And then you cast Nullifying Toxin, which is basically an interrupt. Now note all these macros will be in the description. I have a Root macro, which basically does the same thing. If you're not in Spider Form, it goes into Spider Form, and then it uses the Root. Burrow, same thing with Beetle Form, goes into Beetle Form. If you're not in Beetle Form, uses Burrow. Stun macros, goes into Spider Form, uses Stun. This one goes into Spider Form if it's not in Spider Form, and it uses Skulk, which is basically like stealth, if you're not already stealthed. This is a dash the class has. You have 3 dashes. casts the dash, or if you're not in Spider Form, which because it's a Spider Form only ability, it'll go into Spider Form, so you can then spam the ability. And I have some other macros here and there, but the only reason I really have those macros is because sometimes when you change specs, if you have different terms of specializations, it'll actually remove the spell from your bar. So I just have them here just so it doesn't get removed from the bar when I change talents. But other than that, that's basically all the macros that I have. Now, in regards to my Uyghur, I have some different Uyghurs I've made. Um, I have two Uyghurs that first of all it shows the duration of the dots on the current target that I'm targeting, and if there are no dots on the target, it'll show that there are no dots on the target. It also shows when my Citadel ring is off cooldown. It shows when Mycosis is off cooldown, and they have 10 stacks of fungal growth, which increases the damage of Mycosis by 20%. It shows when Decay is off cooldown, and it shows when the Red Lich talent spec talent has perked, so I don't have to look it down on my bar all the time to see if it's perked. And it also has Tome of Ankerhead, which is a talent that increases. It removes the next spell cost. So next time you cast a spell, there's no cost. Now this can proc from anything, any dots, any damage at all. But I have it right here, so I can always see it without having to look up at my buffs. Now, all these macros and this Uyghur will be in the description, so you can go ahead and get that if you want. Now, for my final thoughts about the specs. Personally, I think Red Venomancer is going to be an insane Mythic Plus spec. Especially this build would be insane for Mythic Plus, as it's focused on AoE. Mythic Plus is coming out in 9 minutes, actually. So I am very excited to try it out in Mythic Plus. Now, it does seem to do less good on single target damage, but it is still extremely good. It's not low at all. It is, it's not as good as, Chronomancer or Ranger or something like that on single target. But on AoE so far, it seems like it's basically outshining every other class, except maybe like a Crusader Templar. It is an insane amount of AoE damage, and it's an insanely fun build to play, especially if you like Destruction Warlock. Last video, I did say that that this spec is not like an Affliction luck, but I would say it's more like a Destruction luck. You have your 2 dots, but your main focus is actually on your Serpent's Fang proc and your different cooldowns that you have. So if you like Destruction luck, this build this spec is basically perfect for you. And with the new changes to mana, it feels way more fluent to play. You don't just randomly run out of mana after like 5 casts. Now leveling it can still be a bit of a challenge. It is still very mana hungry while leveling. But you do get replenishment. You do get your Weaver Form that also gives you mana. Yeah. And also remember, if you ever go or if you're about to go preferably never go if you can. Always try and have enough mana to use Decay, Mycosis, Mycelial Ring, and Fungal Assailants. But if you're about to go just use your Wand, and whenever your Serpent's Fang proc, whenever your Red Lich procs, just use Serpent's Fang to get that replenishment and to get that extra damage and that extra AoE damage. All in all, I love this spec. I think it's awesome. I'm excited to try it out in Mythic Plus in 7 minutes. And yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you on another video or in my live stream. Peace.